Shalom, friends. This is Eliyahu Shear from Chesed Ve'emet, www.lovingkindness.co. And we're continuing with our live Tanya Shiur as well as our Derech Hashem Shiur. At the moment, we're doing Tanya, and it will be recorded separately and put on the site on the YouTube separately. We're looking at chapter 2 of the Tanya written by the Alter Rebbe. And at the moment, what we're discussing is the area of the soul coming down into the physical body. And we said that basically what happens is that the soul undergoes a series of, let's say, chain-like descents until ultimately it inhabits the physical body. And in order to get into the body, it goes through a number of spiritual worlds. Last week, we discussed that the first world that the soul encounters as it descends into the physical body is called the world of Atzilut. And the world of Atzilut is a world of complete goodness. There is no evil in the world. It is close to Hashem, and is a place where Hashem begins to bestow of his guardianness into the physical world. It begins in the stages of Atzilut. And that's where we got up to last week. We continue in this shiur now, regarding the other worlds that the soul descends down until it enters into the physical body. So the second world that the soul descends into is called the world of Beriah. As its name implies, it's a creation, not divinity itself. The word Beriah, from the word bara, to create, is meaning to say that it is something that is completely new. Whereas Atzilut was a world which was directly connected with God. Still, there's a strong connection between God and the soul. Once the soul descends into this world called Beriah, creation, it undergoes something new. It's a creation, something out of nothing. It is the first creation to come about in the matter of yesh me'ayin, creation ex nihilo, from ayin, nothingness. There comes about a yesh, a definite state of existence. Beriah, however, represents merely the passage out of non-existence. It is a state in creation which cannot yet be spoken of as giving rise to proper existence, definable in terms of form and structure. So far what's happened is the soul has descended from the world of Etzilut. It comes down into the world of Beriah. Beriah is this world where we say that there is an equal amount of, we say that there is a more good than there is evil in the world of Beriah, but there still is a certain measure of evil that exists there. In the world of Atzilut, there is only goodness. When we come into the world of Beriah, the world is filled with really mostly good, and then there's a little bit of evil that rests there, just a small amount. Yetzirah, formation, is the world where that which is created from ayin assumes shape and form. Now the soul goes to the next world, the third world, in a descending order. Atzilut, Beriah, Yetzirah. The word Yetzirah means to form something. If you have something available and you reshape it, for example, if you're working with clay and you want to mold the clay into something, then we say that what we're doing is we're molding the clay into something. But if the clay didn't exist, then we'd have to say that we'd have to bring the clay into existence from nothing. When we bring the clay into existence from nothing, that is called the world of Beriah. When you take the clay that has already been created and we begin to form it into something new, to shape it in the way that we want to have it, this is called the world of Yetzirah. And in the world of Yetzirah, basically, we have a situation where there is good and there is bad, but we're going to find that there's probably more bad in the world of Yetzirah than there is good. And then finally, we come into the world of Asiyah. And this refers to complete creation. La'asot, to do something. We actually live in this world of Asiyah. Understandably, this completed creation is still spiritual. The final world of creation, physical Asiyah, comprising our physical world with all its creatures, comes into being only at a later stage. So as the soul descends into this world, it undergoes numerous contractions, let's say, numerous stages of progress until it enters into the physical body. It begins at Atzilut, it moves into the world of Beriah, it moves into the world of Yetzirah, and finally it comes into the world of Asiyah, and then finally into the world of the physical Asiyah. Together, these worlds form the Seder Hishtalshelus. The Seder Hishtalshelus is one of the biggest concepts discussed in Kabbalah and Chassidut, which refers to the chain-like order of descent, which means to say that anything that exists in the physical world must descend into this world through all of these stages. There is a spiritual stage which consists of total spirituality. Then there is a minor form of physicality coming onto it, then a greater form of physicality, so to speak. In those worlds, there is no physicality. I'm just simply using this as an analogy so we can understand it. When it gets to the world of Asiyah, it's taking on already a much greater aspect of physicality, and ultimately it comes into the actual world of the physical Asiyah in which we find ourselves at the moment. We are living in a physical world, and that world is called the physical world of Asiyah. And that is why we perform mitzvot in this world. We do actions. We do things in order to fulfill our task in the world. We do not fulfill our task in the world through thinking things or even through speaking things. We fulfill our task in the world through action. We put on tefillin, we eat food, which is kosher. We make brachot on the food, which is, of course, speaking, but it still relates to the food itself. We take an etrog, and we use an etrog on Sukkot in order to fulfill the mitzvah of waving the 4 species. We sit in a sukkah. We give charity. We take our money and we give charity with the money that we have. Everything that we do in order to perfect the world has to do with the concept of action, of reality, of physicality, everything that we're involved in. This is the world of Asiyah, and this is the world that the soul finds itself in after finally becoming manifest into the physical Asiyah itself. Now, in the course of its descent from Chokhmah Ila'ah, if we remember, we go back to what we learned before, that we said that the soul exists within the supernal wisdom, in the mind of God, so to speak. All souls exist in the mind of God, so to speak, in an aspect that ultimately, just as it is, that the seed from the father's brain manifests itself in the womb of the mother in order to create the child, in order to make a child, so too is it that the seed in the father's mind, meaning in God's mind, exists in a way that it comes into this world and manifests itself as all of the souls that are present in the world. And all souls come from the same source, from the Chokhmah Ila'ah, from the supernal wisdom, the highest level in Atzilut. And what's going to happen now, what's so strange about this concept, is if we all come from this supernal wisdom, this Chokhmah Ila'ah, how can it be that we're all so different? And this is what the Alter Rebbe is coming to explain to us, that what is happening here is that as the soul goes through all of these different levels, as it goes through the different worlds, Atzilut, Beriah, Yetzirah, Asiyah, physical Asiyah, it encounters all sorts of changes. And as a result of that, it manifests itself in different ways. So some souls become the brain of the body. Other souls become the toenails of the body. We're all different in a manifest, in a physical, manifested manner in this world, simply because the soul has undergone different changes to other souls as it manifests in this world. But the reality is that all souls come from that very same source. So it comes to the physical body, and the soul passes through the entire Seder Hishtalshelus, which means the order of the chain-like events that happen, which cause the soul to manifest itself in this world. And as stated earlier, this descent produces the various levels of souls. Just as gestation causes the drop of semen to be transformed into the child's bodily organs, even to the point where it is formed into the nails. If we go back to what we said before, the Alter Rebbe is actually giving us a flow over here. We began our discussion of how the soul is going to go into the body, and at that point in time, the angel comes along and makes it swear an oath that it should be a Tzadik, and at least if it isn't a Tzadik, it shouldn't be a Rasha. And then afterwards, we learned about this concept that there was this evil side to the soul, the animalistic part of the soul. And we discussed all the different types of problems that the animalistic soul can manifest itself in. And thereafter, the Alter Rebbe brought us into the level of the godly soul. And he explained to us that the godly soul ultimately comes from the mind of God, from the Chokhmah Ila'ah. And so that's the difficulty in our understanding now as to how it can be that some people are on a level which is higher than other people, or so it seems that we're on different levels. But the reality is we all come from the same source. Only what happens is, as the seed enters into the egg, there is a growth that happens within it, and certain parts of the seed branch out to become the brain of the child. Certain parts of the seed branch out to become the toenails of the child. And it doesn't mean to say that one part of the child's body is any greater or less important than the other. It just means to say that according to the way that it becomes manifest into the body, so it reveals itself externally in that particular way. After this introduction, we return to the Alter Rebbe's words. Beriah taught me madrega le madrega. Now, when the soul comes down from level to level, al yedei hishtalshelus olamot, through means of this chain-like events of all the worlds, meaning each world is connected to the world below it, like a chain with links. Atzilut is connected to Beriah, which is connected to Yetzirah, which is connected to Asiyah, which is connected to the physical Asiyah. And the soul is coming down all of these worlds. Atzilut, Beriah, Yetzirah, Asiyah. And the soul is coming down into this world through the wisdom of God. As it's written, Kulam b'chokhmah. The pasuk says that God created everything through wisdom, through Chokhmah, which means that everything that exists in the world comes from the Chokhmah, which is the source of the Hishtalshelus. Now, another interesting point to take into account here is to be able to realize that when it says that everything is created through the wisdom, it means that everything that exists is ultimately God's wisdom. So whatever we see around us is God's wisdom. And if we see a soul in a body and it looks a certain way or it manifests itself in a certain way, it is no less the wisdom of God than a soul that seems to be so completely different to it. Now, nitavu mimenu nefesh ruach u'neshama shel ameh haaretz u'bechutei ha'erech. The Alter Rebbe tells us that what happened is that through all of this descent, there came about into the world the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, the three lowest levels of the soul, the three main levels of the soul, which manifest himself in the physical body, shel ameh haaretz u'bechutei ha'erech, from the people of the land and from those who are the lowest in the least worthy who come into being, which means to say that through all of these hishtalshelut, through all of this chain-like events that took place, the nefesh, ruach, and neshama of even the lowest of the low come into this world. Their souls were mostly strongly affected by this descent, and therefore they are on the lowest level. Similarly, all the various levels of higher and lower souls are determined by the soul's descent through hishtalshelut. Some souls are affected to a greater degree, others less. And so we see from here already the Alter Rebbe is teaching us that what's happening is some people are going to come out to be the brain, other people are going to come out to be the toenails. The Alter Rebbe now relates the second point in the analogy to our case. Just as in the analogy, the nails of the child are still bound up with their first source through their being constantly nurtured by the child's brain, so too in the case of the soul. Nevertheless, עודנו קשורות ומיוחדות בייחוד נפלא ועצום במהוסן ועצמוסן הראשון. Nevertheless, with all of this going on, still this toenail is really connected and with a unified connection, awesome connection to the existence where it comes from, this first existence, Chokhmah Ila'ah, which is ultimately from the supernal wisdom, which means to say that even though the souls come down and they manifest themselves in a very low manner in this world, the soul is still attached to the highest source, just as the toenails are attached to the brain of the person. Because the suckling and the life force of the soul and the different levels of the soul, the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama of the nation, of the people of the land, the energy that they get to be able to achieve the things that they're doing ultimately comes from the energy of the nefesh, ruach, and neshama of the tzadikim, v'achachamim, and the sages, roshei b'nei Yisrael shebedoram, the heads of the b'nei Yisrael in their generation. Now the Alter Rebbe is adding a point here. He wants us to know that even though the lowest souls seem to be very low, they are still connected with the highest level souls. And in fact, they receive their life force and their energy from these souls. Now, a person might say, well, that sounds kind of ridiculous. I know my power And I know that the power I have inside of myself comes from me. It doesn't come from any other source anywhere else. I am the power, they will say to themselves. But the reality is, as the Alter Rebbe points out, that just as it is, that the life force of the toenail is ultimately receiving its power from the force of the brain that does everything necessary in the body to make sure that the nail will receive its sustenance, so too do the lower level souls who have been brought down to such a low level need to nurture off the power and the energy and the life force of the higher level souls which exist in the brain. These higher level souls are the souls of the tzaddikim who manifest in the head and the brain. But drawing their nurture and life from those who represent the levels of head and brain, all Jews are bound up with their source in Chokhmah Ila'ah, supernal wisdom. And through this, we can understand the saying of our rabbis on the verse which says, and you shall cleave to him. There is a mitzvah in the Torah that we have to cleave to God. And this is a very interesting idea. How does a person cleave to God? If God is spiritual, or in fact, more so, if God is above spirituality, and God created spirituality, God created physicality and spirituality, he is above all these things, then when the Torah says that we need to cleave to him, how do we cleave to him? If we say that we want to cleave to another person, we can say cleave to a person. Physically speaking, we can hold onto the person and we can experience the feeling of cleaving to that person. But the Torah says to us, but you shall cleave to him, cleave to God. How does a person come to cleave to God? Because everybody who cleaves to a Talmid Chacham, ma'ale alav hakosuv ke'ilu nidbak b'shchina mamash. The Torah says, the Alter Rebbe is teaching us that everybody who cleaves to a Talmid Chacham, which means he makes his life with the Talmid Chacham, he interacts with the Talmid Chacham, with the student of Torah. He interacts, he learns from him, he grows from him, he sees the way that that person acts so that he knows himself what is the right way to act. Then the Torah says that God considers it as if he cleaved to the Shekhinah itself, as if he cleaved to the divine presence itself. Why? Because the Talmid Chacham is the brain of this body. It's the head. He's the head of the body. And so therefore, when we cleave to the Talmid Chacham, meaning the Tzadik, not just some Talmid Chacham, not just in general, the person is, although of course he's on a much higher level, but all the more so when we speak about somebody who is completely immersed in Torah study, completely immersed 24 hours a day. He studies Torah 18 hours a day, 20 hours a day. Perhaps he sleeps for 4 hours. And he's involved in prayer, and he's involved in mitzvah observance, and he can't tear himself away from the beauty of the Torah. When we want to cleave to God, how do we do it? We cleave to him because he himself is the brain. He is that original drop of semen, which includes within it the highest power of God, and that is why he has the strong desire to cleave to God all the time. This seems difficult to comprehend. How can one equate cleaving to a Torah scholar with cleaving to the Shekhinah? However, in light of the above, this is readily understood. Because when we cleave to the Talmid Chacham, then the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, these three levels of the soul, become bounds of the Ameh Haaretz, the general people of the land, the riffraff, let's say, the people of the land, the general people who are involved in general activities in the physical world. So these people are now connecting b'mahusan harishon umuyuchadot b'mahusan harishon v'shoshan shebechokhmah ila'ah. These Ameh Haaretz, the riffraff, let's say, the general populace, are joining, uniting in their very existence and in the very roots of into the Chokhmah Ila'ah, the supernal wisdom. Shehu yisparach v'chokhmaso echad, because he, God, and his wisdom are all one. Which means when we cleave to the Talmid Chacham, when we cleave to the wisdom that is there, but God and his wisdom are all one. So when we cleave to the wisdom, we cleave to God. V'hu amada, and as we learned before in the previous shiur, that God is the knowledge, and he is the knower, and he is everything about the knowledge, the knower, the known. He is it all. So therefore, when we cleave to the wisdom, we cleave to God. The Alter Rebbe points out something interesting. What about the sinners and the rebellious people who go against the Talmidei Chachamim, who don't want to cleave to him? So according to this, if we want to receive divine sustenance, we need to cleave to the Talmid Chacham, who is directly attached with God through his observance of the mitzvot, through his study of Torah. But what about those people who are sinning and they're rebellious and they go against the Torah and they don't want to have anything to do with the Talmid Chacham? How do they receive their spiritual nurture and life? Spiritual life and nurture flow only where there is a desire to nurture and give life. In answer to this, the text continues. Yenikas nefesh ruach and neshama shelahim. This suckling of the nefesh ruach and neshama which they have. Mibechinas achorayim shel nefesh ruach and neshama v'nishmas ruach v'nishmos talmidei chachamim. Their suckling of their ruach neshama, nefesh ruach neshama, in the aspect comes from this aspect of the back side, which means the side which is on the back of the nefesh ruach neshama of the talmidei chachamim, which means that those who rebel against the Talmid Chacham, those who rebel against God, those who rebel against Torah, they too will receive sustenance, just as it is that the toenail constantly receives sustenance from the brain of the person, irrespective of if it is thinking consciously about receiving the sustenance or not. Nurture from the hind part can be understood by way of comparison to one who gives an object to his enemy, obviously not out of a true desire to give, but rather due to some external factor. So for example, a person feels that he's got to give his enemy something, but he doesn't like the person because the person is his enemy. So if he gives him the item directly to his face, then he is showing some sort of love to that person. So what does he do instead if he has to give the item? For example, two people are in a court and there is the person who is pleading his case and saying that he is owed a certain amount of money, and the defendant is claiming he doesn't owe this fellow any money whatsoever. At the end of the court case, the judge rules in favor of that person who is claiming the money. Now, the defendant is required to pay the money. When he pays the money, he does so in a begrudging manner. He does not really want to give the money. He doesn't feel it is fair to give the money. How does he give it? Does he put on a smile? Does he say, here is the $10,000 that I owe you? And he gives it to him with a big smile. And he puts a smile on the check or whatever it may be to show that he really appreciates this person. He really likes this person. Thank you so much for giving me this honor that I can give it to you. For example, a person is in his car and he's stopped by a traffic officer. And the traffic officer says to him, you owe us money. You were speeding. You were caught speeding. You've got to pay a ticket. The ticket is $500. He says, I don't want to pay that. You've got to pay the money. So he says, well, all right. So he takes the ticket. He goes and he pays the money. Does he thank the officer for giving him the ticket? But he owes the money. He has to pay. How does he do it? He doesn't say thank you. He doesn't even want to give the money over. Ultimately, he makes his way to the offices of where he has to go to pay the money, and he slams the money down on the counter. He takes his receipt and he walks out, and he's angry. The grudging reluctance with which he gives will be reflected in his manner. He will turn away from him, tossing the object to his enemy over his shoulder. The same is true in the spiritual sphere. When the spiritual nurture is given unwillingly, it is described as coming from the hind part, the back side of that person, the hind part of the giver, an external level of nurture, which means to say that if the person who is supposed to be receiving this nurture from the Tzadik is already somebody who is rebelling against the Tzadik, how can the Tzadik possibly give to him? Because this person really has turned away altogether from the Tzadik. He doesn't even want it. But the Tzadik still has to give to him because the energy has to flow from the Tzadik to this person. Nevertheless, even those who rebel against the sages receive some measure of spiritual nourishment from them. For every soul, without exception, must be bound up with its root and source, as explained earlier. The level of nurture they receive is, however, from the hind part of the souls of the sages, which means that those who rebel against the sages will still receive their nurture. They will still receive their blessing, but they will not receive it in a revealed way. They will not receive it with a smile. It comes to them in blessing. It comes to them from the face of the Tzadik, with the Tzadik smiling and handing over the energy to this person. Having concluded that every Jew has a holy soul which emanates from above, we said before from Chokhmah Ila'ah, Supernal Wisdom, the Alter Rebbe now states that even the quality, the rank or level of each individual soul is determined only by factors from above, spiritual factors, such as the soul's above-mentioned descent through Hishtalshelus. No actions of this physical world can determine its quality and rank. The Alter Rebbe makes this statement indirectly by clarifying a quotation from the Zohar, which seems to indicate the contrary. So basically, up until here, what we've learned is that according to this, when the soul comes down into the body, it doesn't really have much choice about the type of lifestyle it is going to have to deal with as it enters into the body. Will it be a Tzadik? Will it be a Rasha? Will it be a Beinoni? It doesn't seem to have much choice, but rather, because of the descent that it goes through, each soul will manifest itself in a different way in this physical world. And nothing that we do in the physical world can change what we have gone through in order to be sent through into this physical body. Now, the Alter Rebbe brings a quote from the Zohar, which seems to say something which is slightly contrary to this. Meaning what? Meaning that when we read the statement in the Zohar, we get the feeling that a person can be changed by something else that will cause him to come out into this world, good or bad. And not that it is determined by above of how things happen, but rather something is determined by below. That's written in the Zohar and the Zohar Chadash, that the most important thing is everything is dependent upon how a person sanctifies himself at the time of relations of intimacy specifically, which means to say that the way that we sanctify ourselves at the time that we are intimate in a married relationship, this will cause a change in the structure of the nature of the soul of the child. Which isn't the case with regards to the general populace, the ignorant and the ill, who do not conduct themselves thus. The Alter Rebbe is saying at the end of the day, the Amei Haaretz are not going to sanctify themselves as required when they bring a soul down into the world, whereas the Tzadik will sanctify himself, and his thoughts will be pure, and they will fulfill all the laws that are required. Mikvah, the laws of Nida, the Shiva Nikiyim, everything involved in the laws of Nida, fulfilled to the highest extent. The child is conceived on a Shabbos evening after Chatzot, after midnight, the highest time when a person can engage in intimacy to bring down holy souls into the world. But the Amei Haaretz, they don't go by this. They're going to be intimate at any time, and they won't necessarily sanctify themselves to the degree that the Tzadik has sanctified himself to, which means we need to explain what is going on, because they're going to bring down souls into the world as well. And it seems a little unfair that they can change the nature of the soul itself. The ignorant, as the Zohar goes on to imply, draw down for their child a soul of a lower level, which seems to indicate that an action occurring in this physical world can in fact affect the soul's level. Not so, declares the Alter Rebbe. The Zohar is not referring to the soul. What means to say that there is a garment that surrounds the soul which enters into the body. And depending on the mindset, the thoughts that go on in the parent's head, especially at the time of intimacy, and of course, whether or not they fulfilled all the laws of Nida as they were required to, this can change the structure of the garment, but not the structure of the soul. Hayinu, which means to say, Mishum she'ein lecha nefesh ruach neshama, she'ein la levush minefesh de'atzmos avi ve'imo. Because no nefesh ruach and neshama is without a garment which stems from the nefesh of the essence of the father and the mother, and all the commandments that it fulfills in its lifetime, the soul is going to fulfill mitzvot. Hakol al yedei oisa halavush. All the things that it does, these mitzvot come about through this garment that covers over the soul, which allows the soul to interact with the physical world. And even with the abundance energy that is given to it from heaven, hakol hu al yedei levush zeh. That means to say everything comes from this garment. It's kind of like a pump which allows the energy to travel from the heavens into this physical world. And the way that the parents sanctified themselves at the time that they were intimate is going to affect the nature of this pump. It's going to affect the way that heaven will be able to bestow energy to the soul in the physical world. So it is through this garment that the soul achieves its ability to affect the body and to perform the commandments involving physical matters. Even the benevolence that flows to one from heaven is all given through that garment, because the soul is so strongly bound up with this garment. The Zohar refers to the garment in this context as the person's soul. If a person sanctifies himself, which means at the time of intimacy, and he fulfills all the mitzvot that are required of him or her, yamshich levush kadosh lenishmas beno. He will draw down a holy garment for this soul of his son. And thereby, this will enable the child to serve God more readily. And what we're learning here is a very deep secret in the Torah. The Torah is teaching us that what is happening is our ultimate duty in the world is to serve God through tefillah, davening, through mitzvah observance, commandments, through Torah study. But the catch is like this. Most of us know there's a feeling sometimes that we don't have the energy to do what's required of us. Sometimes even we feel like it's not even for us. What has this got to do with us? Why must I shake the lulav and esrog? Why must I put a mezuzah on my door? Why must I study Torah? He doesn't even feel like he has the energy. Interesting. Because when one looks at the nature of the Tzadik, one will see that the Tzadik is constantly involved in Torah and mitzvahs and prayer. He doesn't stop for a second, as we said before at the beginning of the Shear, that the Torah scholar will satiate himself with Torah study for 18 hours a day, 20 hours a day. He won't stop for a second. How is it that he has this energy to be able to do this? And yet somebody else lacks this energy, finds himself lethargical. He doesn't find himself having the energy to do all the mitzvot that he wants to do. He finds that he doesn't have the energy to study Torah like he would like to. He wants to wake up at 12 o'clock at night to perform the Tikkun Chatzot. And he wants to study Torah until 6 o'clock in the morning when it's going to be the Neit Tzachama and the sun comes up. And before the sun comes up, he goes to the mikvah and then he davens Neit. He davens the Amidah at the earliest possible time. And then he begins his day by studying more Torah. And then he's engaged in mitzvah observance and so on and so forth. But he feels that he can't do any of this. The answer lies in these very words that the Alter Rebbe is telling us. The Alter Rebbe is saying that what happens is the married couple, the parents, draw down a levush, a garment, which surrounds the soul. And it is through this garment that a person is able to interact in this physical world in a spiritual manner, which means to say, if a person feels this connection, he really wants to do all these things, and he goes ahead and he does it, it is a good sign that his parents were thinking positive, good thoughts to bring down a holy garment for this neshama, and thereby enables the child to serve God more readily. But when the parents don't think those thoughts, and they haven't engaged through the whole process of bringing the child into the world, through an aspect of holiness, fulfilling all the mitzvahs of Taras HaMishpacha, of family purity, the laws of Nidah, so then at that point in time, if they haven't done it, The child's garment will be one which is thick, and it won't allow for the easy transmission of this powerful energy to allow the neshama to interact with spiritual things. Va'afilu hi neshama gedolah, says the Alter Rebbe, even if the soul is a great soul, tzricha lekiddush aviv, he still needs the holiness of the father and the mother at the time of intercourse, which means to say, even a great soul that comes into the world is going to require that the parents were engaged in a holy thoughts, and they were fulfilling all these mitzvahs in order to bring this garment into this child's soul, even though the child's soul is a very holy soul. Aval haneshama atzma, but regarding the soul itself, Inay, behold, lifamim, sometimes it happens that nishmas adam gavoa le'ein kates, that the soul of a man who is so great, ba'aliyot beno shel adam nivzeh v'shafel, he can come to be the son of a person who is despised and lowly. How the Alter Rebbe teaches us another wonderful secret in the Torah, that it can be that a great soul can be born to very ordinary parents. Why? Because what's happening is that the soul can go anywhere. God chooses where the soul is going to go. Some souls go to great parents who are spiritually connected to God. Other souls go to ordinary parents who fulfill the mitzvot on their level. Other souls go to parents who are not involved in any Torah and mitzvahs in the general way. They don't occupy themselves. And the souls go to those people also. Sometimes great souls go to those people. But what happens is the garment that surrounds the soul is affected. And it is through that garment that will affect the soul to be able to interact on a spiritual level in this physical world. So he says here, but the soul itself, as distinct from its garment, is not affected by the parent's sanctification. No human being can change the power and greatness of a soul that comes into this world, because the soul comes from God. Parents do not make souls. Parents make bodies, and they make a garment for the soul, a spiritual garment that surrounds the soul. But who we are as souls, our parents didn't make us as the souls that we are in any way, no matter what they thought, no matter what they did. The soul is a portion of God from above, as we already learnt in the beginning of this chapter. In fact, it sometimes happens that the soul of an infinitely lofty person comes to be the son of an ignoble and lowly person. As the Arizal already wrote, calls there all of this down, the great Ari HaKadosh, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria of the 16th century, the great Kabbalist, wrote down these very thoughts. Calls there B'Likutei Torah, Parshas Vayera. He brought this down in Likutei Torah in Parshas Vayera, Uvetame Mitzvahs Parshas Breshis. And there you can go and check out in more detail exactly what the Ari says. Thus, the physical world, of which the parents are a part, can in no way affect the soul's spiritual rank. Even the statement of the Zohar that the essential factor regarding the state of the soul is the holy manner of conduct during sexual union pertains only to the soul's garments. The soul itself, with all its various levels, emanates from above. And this concludes chapter 2. And just very briefly again, we began chapter 2 where the Alter Rebbe spoke to us about the godly soul. And he's concluded chapter 2 with a rounded thought by telling us that this godly soul that comes into the physical body will certainly be affected by various changes that occur to it as it descends throughout all the worlds and manifests itself in the body. But the power of the soul itself is given to it by God. God gives the soul its power of what it is in the world, and the parents bring the soul into the world, and what the parents do is they give it a garment that allows it to interact as a spiritual being within the physical world. The godly soul, it cannot be changed. It has its rank as whatever it is. The parents can do nothing to change that. What they can, however, do through fulfilling correctly the laws of Taras HaMishpacha, of family purity, and the laws of Nida, when they do so, is that they bring the soul into the world in a way of purity, which means to say that the garment that surrounds it is pure and allows the soul to interact in this physical world in a pure manner and not to be swayed by the physical lurings of the material world. These are all very beautiful thoughts, and we're going to leave this chapter, chapter 2, with these beautiful thoughts. And so we're going to conclude this shiur now, and we're going to continue with the shiur in the Ramchal, the Derech Hashem. For those who are present in the shiur, we're going to continue. I'm just signing out now for those online, and this is Eliyahu Shear from Chesed Ve'emet, www.lovingkindness.co. If you've enjoyed this shiur, please do subscribe to my channel and click on the bell so that you can be notified of further shiurim. I thank you very much for joining me, and I wish you everything of the best. Shalom, shalom.